Hi, Read 585. This is part 2 of your week 10 lectures. We are talking about a few things here. First of all, looking at data to plan professional development opportunities. So that is carried over from week 9. You should have done the data analysis part 2 of assignment number 3, and now you're starting to think about your plan, your SWOT analysis, your recommendation, so that you can essentially make your professional development presentation geared to staff. And then second, identify the principles of effective professional development so you can use those in your professional development plan. That is the content for week 10. So before we get going, I wanted to take a look at our discussion forum. It's been a while since we took a look at that. Right now, you guys are in week 9, where you're commenting on Chapter 7 of the existing California framework, as well as the Cunningham article on the 4 blocks and the I'm not stupid, how inappropriate assessment drives instruction. So let's take a look. Only 6 people had something posted so far, so let's see what they have to say. Here is an intervention idea from Jen. She talks about in their action plan using data to gather from our assessments to identify students who are in need of Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention support. If necessary, they will conduct the reading inventories to determine the most fundamental skills these students need, and then they will prioritize the most foundational of those. Great idea there. So identify the students, dig deeper with some assessments, and then really think about what is the biggest need of this student, what is holding them back, prioritize those. Based on the data, she's going to form flexible groups with specific learning goals in mind. Students will be assessed more regularly, about every 4 to 6 weeks. I'm curious what assessment tool you want to use to determine if the intervention is supporting the students in meeting their learning objectives. And this way they're going to utilize the existing reading blocks and personnel to provide tailored, targeted instruction that fits the need of our students. So basically being more effective with the resources they currently have. Great idea. Elvira had a great idea as well. She talked about applying the RTI model and the diagnostic prescriptive approach to the ELL population. So from her data analysis, she found that most of the students have a Hispanic background. Of the 96.7% of students, less than a third have not yet reclassified and are still considered ELLs or long-term ELLs, which is higher than the district average by 6% and higher than the state by 12.1%. So in order to meet the needs of all students, she wants to make groups that have specific needs, group the kids by those needs, and then use research-based strategies like what, tell me more, to capitalize on their strengths while addressing the weaknesses and possible threats. She's going to assess, diagnose, organize resources, differentiate, and group according to the needs of the students. She wants to group the students at this school across grade levels and age groups in multi-tier groups according to reading levels and needs. So I thought that was a pretty clever idea, warranted by the data, to really look at the need of the English learners and then group them accordingly and plan some intervention. Another aha moment from Elvira talking about the Dennis article on inappropriate assessment practices. Basically, what she took from this is that these assessments just tell you who mastered the state standards and who did not, but not why or why not they didn't master the standards. So if we're remediating based on standardized tests, that's not going to be a best practice. According to the author, a great number of schools embark in what is called a surface level teaching of reading that does not teach specific reading strategies. So a takeaway for her was when the author emphasized the importance of teaching students according to their individual abilities and needs using a multi-tier intervention plan for adolescents. So takeaway being one size fits all instruction is not going to be beneficial from everyone. Elizabeth adds on to that. She also mentions the need to conduct a series of assessments to determine the varying needs. We must consider the abilities with which our students enter the classroom based on data, and then turn our focus on how best to build upon that knowledge. Great quote. Both summative and formative assessments are currently being used at her school site. However, English learners and students with disabilities are underperforming on these assessments. Dennis goes on to discuss that when students are not taught according to their individual abilities and needs, but instead are taught based on the premise of a one-size-fits-all instructional program, we have not provided them with opportunities to climb the literacy ladders. And there's a lot of research and pedagogy on that, going back to Vygotsky and his zone of proximal development, right? We don't want to just teach them, whatever grade level might be, if that's not appropriate given their zone of proximal development. We want to determine where they are currently performing at and go just a little bit above that level and then teach them there until they can, then meet that level. And then we want to go one level above, and then they'll meet that level, and then one level above. And in that way, we can create a ladder so they can eventually be successful. Whereas if we're just teaching them, to higher than they are, they're not going to get there. We need to, give them a step ladder scaffolded approach. And I know Krashen has a theory for English language development of I+1, which says the same thing, that you want to find where they're at and just want to go a little bit above that, but not too far above that they can't access it. I think about when I play tennis, I'm not very good, but if I play with someone a little bit better than I am, I usually have a better game. I try to step up to meet their level. But if I were to play with a professional tennis player, I don't think that I would be able to get up to their level without, a lot of one-on-one private sessions there. All right, from Kim. This is where Chapter 7 was helpful. What works for students who are EL and struggling with reading. It came down to some concrete things, and she lists all of the wonderful practices that they highlighted there. And then she also goes on to say educators who wish to help children with difficulties in a particular domain need to know about the course of typical development in that domain and how best to develop these abilities. So for EL students, this is what I would have to research more in order to provide PD on it. So you bring up a great point. If we are noticing that there is a learning gap or an achievement gap between our English language learners and our overall student population, we are going to need to focus on that subgroup. And while we might have a wonderful reading specialist or language specialist or ELL specialist who can do RTI for English language learners, we're still going to need to come up with a systemic and cohesive approach that is going to permeate the whole school, not just be isolated to the intervention room. So I'm glad that you brought up that broader perspective of providing PD and then needing to do a lot of research in order to provide PD on that. An idea from Jess also regarding PD. She talks about a lot of what was mentioned in the articles could be very useful to her staff, specifically in the areas of engagement and specialist support. So engaging students would allow them to retain and apply the content better. Teachers could do this by taking interest inventories and then connecting content to their culture and background. Teachers could also use the students' strengths to build weaknesses. This could motivate students to connect to the concepts and absorb them better. I would provide the entire article for the staff to read and use to design goals, then outline professional development to support the staff to be able to accomplish those goals. And that's actually one of the 6 principles of effective professional development, is that it is aligned to school and teacher goals. So I'm glad that you as well are thinking about professional development with this and how to break it down for staff. All right, speaking about professional development, that is our topic, what makes for quality professional development. So you had the article titled Accountability by Design in Literacy Professional Development, and I thought this cartoon was pretty clever on accountability. There were 4 people and an important job to be done. These are the 4 people: everybody, anybody, somebody, nobody. Nobody um, knows, nobody knew, sorry. Nobody knew that everybody was not going to do it. Everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but as a result, nobody did it. All right, moving on. So, what are the 6 design principles for professional development? Well, first you have principle number 1, which is high quality professional development directly connects to student learning goals that are clear and accepted by all. So, your professional development should not be random, but it should be directly connected to student learning needs. So it should focus on the theory and practice underlying pedagogical content knowledge. And some examples provided in the article was that they introduced the developmental continuum in reading, writing, orthographic, and oral language development and did professional development on that. They also use their Ohio State standards to provide professional develop on, and this connection to what students need to know and learn. That is the goal. So teachers, with the support of literacy specialists, should be driving the focus of professional development. It should be based on what is needed for student learning goals. It is not prepackaged because that does not take into account the unique needs. And then teachers should be the ones making decisions about the focus of discussion sessions based again on the learning needs. Next design principle is that professional development involves active learning for teachers. So the knowledge base must come alive. And a way to do that is first to think about the structure of your sessions. They mentioned the example of doing a before, during, after framework. So before the presentation of new materials, the teachers share their experience. During the session, the teachers participate in a problem-solving activity, extending the concepts, and then after the activity, the teachers share and discuss new insights from the problem-solving activity. So you can see how teachers are engaged before, during, and after, which is a good way to set that up. They also mention completing field work and how that provides an opportunity for participants to be active. So there should be some talk time and some try time. Design principle number 3 is that professional development is embedded in the context of work in schools in classrooms. So the key word there is embedded. So the work of schools is to ensure that all students achieve academic success. So collaboratively and collectively, teachers need to be involved in designing and implementing the professional development. It should be continuous and a reflective process of that assess, plan, teach instructional cycle. And it talks about how in this section an outside trainer might come in, which we've had outside trainers come in, and it always makes me very nervous that they're going to deliver something that is not relevant to the staff, and usually that's what happens, because how are they to know what is relevant to our staff? They don't have that background knowledge. So here we really want to embed the learning in the context. Design principle number 4 is that professional development is continuous and ongoing. It is sustained over time and involves a substantial number of hours. The article mentions that 1 year of professional development was characteristic of effective schools, but actually researchers have not determined the ideal amount of time for professional development. But we don't want to do just a one drive-by session and then expect it to stick, because They might, do it for a week or a few weeks, but it really does need to be ongoing. You need to have follow-ups. It should be 6 months to a year where you're really focused on one topic. Alrighty, design principle 5, professional development is based on an ongoing and focused inquiry related to teacher learning, student learning, and what we know about good instruction. So the key word here is that inquiry piece. And they give the example of having the teacher and the coach get together. The teacher teaches 4 lessons that each have a specific instructional focus in one area, and then they transcribe a part of the lesson and then analyze the instruction with the support of the literacy specialist. So the benefit of that is to kind of look at it with a more analytical lens and really pick apart, what do you want the students to learn? Did they learn it? How do you know? What are you going to do now? Making them more reflective as to how they can be a better teacher. And the example they did with that transcribing of the lesson reminded me a lot of the book, The Teaching Gap, where it talks about in Japan, teachers do ongoing professional development. Essentially, they do action research and they call it lesson study, where the teachers at their grade level sit down, they plan a lesson using all kinds of research, and then the teachers go out and they teach the lesson and they observe each other teach the lesson and they collect evidence from the effectiveness of the lesson, and then they talk about, what made one person's lesson more effective than the other and why did these kids get it, and they're just constantly doing these cycles of inquiry, and as a result their instruction is a lot more effective, whereas here in the United States we don't do as much of that collaboration. We don't do, action research when we're in the schools. We're a lot more isolated oftentimes. All right, design principle 6, coherence is evident in all aspects of the professional development system. And when they say coherence, they mean a consistent focus that is cohesive for about a year, and everyone is really focused on that. That's what the principal is looking for when they do walkthroughs. That's what the superintendent is looking for when they do walkthroughs. That's what the coach is observing and giving feedback on. That's what teachers are strategically planning to implement. So everything is just very aligned to professional development standards and goals, and then school goals as well. So those are the 6 design principles for professional development as given to you in this week's article. Thoughts on why this article was selected and what you hopefully gain from it. And that is that the best professional development is not a drive-by. It occurs over the course of the year with feedback to teachers and opportunities to adapt and modify to meet the teacher needs. And then also, this article should have provided an example of coaching and how that can be incorporated into a professional development plan. I know a lot of times when you think of professional development, you think of attending a 1 or 2 day workshop, but in this case, it really was this ongoing exchange between the coach and the teacher, and they did do this process of inquiry. So hopefully you picked that up as a possible coaching technique as well. All right, just wanted to make you aware of some different professional organizations that you should check out. The first is the International Reading Association, soon to be the International Literacy Association. If you join as a student, it is much cheaper. And when you do join, you can select different journals like the Reading Teacher or the Reading Research Quarterly to belong to. You also get access to readwritethink.org, which has a ton of lessons and materials. So they are kind of the the larger council. Underneath them are state chapters like the California Reading Association. They just held an amazing conference that Dr. Bowers was at in Sonoma with Nell Duke, Regie Routman, David Pearson, Diane Lapp, lots of big names. I know a few of you said, I can't go to the International Reading Conference, it's out of state. Well, check out the California Reading Association and see what they've got going on, because that would be in state. You can also check out your local reading council, like the Orange County Reading Association, which will be very proud to know that the past, present, and incoming presidents of the Orange County Reading Association are all Cal State Fullerton alum. Yay. And then lastly, the National Council of Teachers of English have a lot of great resources and PD for that. So hopefully you've begun thinking about the data that you have in front of you from your assignment number 3 and how you can use that to propel the staff forward in a focused area or goal for professional development opportunities. And we've talked a little bit about different principles of effective professional development that can help you think of the best way to deliver professional development and make a plan for your school site. All right, to launch you, I would just like to say that I know you all are very committed to be lifelong learners. As I yawn, sorry. Hopefully, you will never feel too burnt out to improve yourself as educators. And then here's a little graphic of the burnt out teachers support group. So I'm feeling a little like this currently. Hopefully, you are not. But spring break for us is next week. That's excellent. And you will be working on your SWOT analysis, I'm sure. And then I will see you back for week 12, where we're continuing to talk about professional development for 2 more weeks. And then our last topic will be coaching. Have a great week.